What happens when you're in possession and bound to a magic key of untold power? You become a key holder, obviously. From YA dystopian to epic fantasy, this week's author is full of creative secrets. I'm your host, Garrett K. Jones, and welcome to the second interview in this season's Author Awareness April Marathon. Hey, welcome back to The Right Way, where we talk book recommendations, creative writing tips, and especially this month, author interviews. I'm excited to introduce another amazing writer to you guys, but before I do that, here are a couple of quick announcements. First up, next week is not only the third week of the interview marathon, it is also the date for my April writing workshop at the Hanford branch of the Kings County Library. The workshop kicks off at 11 a.m. and runs until 12:30 p.m. We'll be covering how to write thrillers, the hallmarks involved in the genre, and tips for developing a strong story. If you're able to join us in person, the class is free, but if you're not, I'll be live streaming it right here on YouTube. Second, Free Comic Book Day is fast approaching on Saturday, May 3rd. I'll be at my local comic book shop, DJ's Collectibles, for the event to sign and sell copies of all my books. There will be other local vendors as well as members of the local chapter of the 501st Vader's Fist cosplayers. Now, if you're local, it would be great to see you there. All right, that's it. Let's get into this. I connected with Danielle Harrington a few years ago through Instagram, and I was intrigued first by the book series she was producing. It's taken a couple of years to get schedules to align, but as soon as her schedule opened up, I got her scheduled for this marathon. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Danielle, welcome to The Right Way. It is a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
It is my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of years, ever since we connected on social media. So tell me about your work as an author.
So I am a cross-genre author now. I have a young adult dystopian series out. This is the first book, The Diseased Ones, and this is a 4-book series that I spent about 7 years writing. And my quick pitch of this is it's about a futuristic society that tests people's blood to find and eliminate people with superpowers. The superpowers part of this series was really fun to come up with and kind of create the world around. And then this year, I crossed over to fantasy, and I wrote a new adult fantasy romance called Keyholder that just came out October 25th. And this is an illustrated book, so commissioning the illustrations for this book was really fun and such a cool way to see this project come to life. My quick pitch for this one is it's about a young woman who becomes bloodbound to a key that holds the power to save the world, and so all the kingdoms hunt her for this key. She's captured by a bounty hunter in the name of one of the kings, and she has to discover what her role as the key holder is in order to save the world.
Awesome. So how did you get into writing? Was this something that you've always wanted to do, or you just woke up one day and you're like, need to write a book?
I have been writing since I was very little, like 5 or 6 years old. I started writing stories, and I have just done it my whole life. I started a lot of manuscripts, especially I think the first biggest thing I tried, it was fantasy, is in middle school, and I wrote about 30,000 words. And then in high school, I started another manuscript that I got about 50,000 words into. Again, in college, I was just writing stuff. But The Diseased Ones was the first manuscript I had ever finished in its entirety. And when I finally finished a book for the first time in my life, when I had been writing so many different things and I could never finish anything, I was like, this is the book. This is the one that I'm going to get published with. I can feel it. I really believe in this story. And the diseased ones, I had originally, like early concept, intended to be a standalone, and that turned into a 4-book series and took 7 years of my life, but it was epic and fantastic. And like, it's one of the biggest accomplishments of my life because I stuck with it and I saw out a whole series. And I have had amazing feedback. Like, I'm just so proud of it, and my readers are happy with most of my readers. Can't say everyone, can't please everyone, but most of my readers have loved like the conclusion of the series, and they stuck with me for so long to see it out, and it just made me so happy.
That's so cool. That is really cool. So, obviously, superheroes to some extent are some of your inspirations, but what are some other inspirations that you've had that have influenced your work as a writer?
Well, a couple books and then a TV series. So, 2 books that I'll mention. The Giver by Lois Lowry. I was obsessed with that as a kid. I read it like over and over and over again. I probably read that book like 20 or 30 times. I was that in love with it. And then also, The Hunger Games, book 1 was the first book I remember in my life being able to read in one sitting. Like, I binged it in a day and I was like, what is happening to my life right now? Like, I was so inspired and I loved how that made me feel as a reader. And so
Mhm.
I've always just loved the dystopian genre. Another book, The Uglies by Scott Westerfeld. Huge fan. When I was like in my teen years, I read all 4 books of the Ugly series. And I was just like, I want to write something that makes people feel the way that I felt reading these books, because like it just was, they say write what you want to read. Like, that was very much my mindset going into this project that ended up turning into this big series. I was like, I'm writing this for the people who loved those books so that if they find me, like, they can feel that again, right? Because we say, like, oh, I wish I could read this series again for the first time, you know? Like, I would love to reread Hunger Games and not know anything about it and experience that again.
Yeah,
So, and the TV series, Heroes, I don't know if you
love heroes.
a lot of the superpowers I was heavily inspired by. Like, I binged that TV show and then immediately started like writing the diseased ones because I had all these like superpowers in my head. I was like, oh, I just got to write it down.
What is the hardest part or the biggest challenge that you faced in the creation of your work?
Well, I would say it's a steep learning curve, not only learning how to write better and how to tell a story in a compelling way, which I feel like I've improved with every book I've done. I'm really proud of the diseased ones. It's my debut. I wouldn't go back and change it, even with like I'm a better writer, I'm a better storyteller now. I love what it is, and I love that it's a snapshot of who I was when I published that.
Mhm.
So I'd say just like the learning curve of learning how to indie publish and everything I needed to do. I was like, this feels like I'm taking another degree all over again, and like
Mhm.
I'm in school.
Yeah.
And so that was difficult. Um, and I'm very comfortable with the publishing process now. Like, Keyholder is my 5th published book. I have indie publishing like down pat in terms of what I know I need to do to get my next book out. So I say my current biggest struggle is trying to now figure out how to market my books in a way that I can start pushing towards a sustainable income off of just book sales, because that is my goal. I would love to make money that I can live off of just from book sales. And I know that the more books that I have out, the higher that opportunity becomes because I have more to sell.
Right.
But especially with Keyholder branching out into fantasy and it being fantasy romance, enemies to lovers, like, I wrote tropes into that book that I wanted to write. I didn't just write it to sell the book. I wrote the book because that's what I wanted to do. But I think Keyholder has a higher marketability on something like Book Talk because of the audience that we generally see on Book Talk. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I can make I can make a decent amount of money on Keyholder. And so the struggle is just figuring out like how to attack marketing to like make this more lucrative for me.
Yeah, I totally get that. And marketing, I think a lot of indie authors, that's something we struggle with. I mean, I suck at it. The last event that I went and did was back in August. I was at my local library. They were doing a local author meet and greet, and I was probably the only the only guy there who didn't sell a single book.
Oh no.
Yeah, I had 6 books with me,
Oh no.
and not a I didn't sell a single one, and I'm like, this tanks. Like I set a goal for myself this year of like selling 500 copies.
Uh-huh.
I've sold like maybe less than 30.
Oh man, yeah, it's hard. It's I have a lot of different things planned this year. So I'm really going to be very aggressive this year and I'm going to see what that does for me.
Mhm.
Especially given Keyholder's genre. But yeah, it's hard. It's just like you feel like you push and push and push and then you feel like you're just shouting into the void of nothingness.
Yep.
And you're like, "But I promise I wrote a good book. Somebody read it." Like, I swear. If you
Yeah.
like XYZ, you will probably like my book.
Yeah. Yeah. And I totally get that because that's something that I've encountered. In fact, one of the ways that I pitch my first book, I'll go in when people ask what it's all about. The first thing I do is I sit there and say, hey, you want to take a look at it, go for it. Get, having them physically touch it because then it creates that emotional connection to the book. But then I'll start talking to them about asking what they like as far as their fandoms and stuff like that. And a lot of times people will say Lord of the Rings, and I'll say, well, it's like Lord of the Rings, just not as much walking. It's like Game of Thrones without too much
Mhm.
graphic nudity and violence.
Yeah.
And then I pitch that it's got dragons, elves, magic, and vampires that don't sparkle.
Huh, nice. I did find too, so I mentioned Keyholder's an illustrated book, and like
Mhm.
I would just show people
Oh my
some of
god,
the colored
that is
illustrations.
gorgeous!
I know it's so pretty.
Who did
Um,
your art?
her name is Effa. I hired her. I found her on Fiverr, and she. I had to book her way out. I like booked her in February and like didn't get the last art piece until like almost 7 months later because she's very popular. But she did a fantastic job. There's no AI. This is all like computer drawn. But
That is
that was like a huge selling
beautiful.
point. I'm like, how often do you come across like, yeah, there's a bunch of romantasy books out there, and maybe my book to some might seem tropey in areas, but like, who can say they come across an illustrated book that often? Like an illustrated adult book.
Yeah,
Like, it's so cool. I'm so proud of it, and it's so pretty.
yeah. I mean, the art alone, it kind of reminds me of some of the really nice editions that you can find on the Folio Society.
Mm-hmm.
Like a couple years ago, I got my dad a copy of Casino Royale because that was the first James Bond book he ever read, and so it's this nice cloth bound, like gold
Oh,
filigree embossed cover, but like inside there's really awesome like classic 1950s style art of
oh my
Bond
gosh.
in the
That's
various
beautiful.
scenes, and I'm just like, it's so cool. Um, so yeah, I totally get the draw of being able to show them images that are in the book to
Mhm.
depict the scenes because that's really cool to see. So based on your experience, if you could give any advice to other would-be authors, what would you tell them?
I think it's really important that if you're serious about writing and publishing a book, that you need to find your community and you need to be open to learning and you need to be open to learning like all the time because the longer you write, you get better, but you get better by reading books in the genre that you want to write and by getting feedback from people who are more experienced than you. Like, come into it with an open mind and a marathon mindset because it's not a quick process to write and publish a book.
It's
It
not.
takes a long time and it takes a lot of perseverance. And so I highly encourage people to just find their people, which also takes time. But once you have a good community of people, like I the Diseased Ones published in February 2020, like I'm almost 5 years later with 5 books out. Like I've found great people and I have a great editor and great alpha readers and a beta team that I always give my manuscripts to and like readers who know me now and who are excited that I put out another book. Like that did not happen overnight. That happened because I wanted it and I persisted through the growing pains of learning how to write better and learning how to publish myself because the indie publishing route is just what I wanted to do for the creative control. And I'm now entering the mindset of, okay, so I know indie authors make like 6 figures off of this. There's no reason why I can't do the same as I continue to like release books. So eventually, somewhere down the line, I hope and pray that I'll be in that space, but that I know that that's going to take a long time for me to make a sustainable income off of just book sales. But it is possible. So like perseverance and just being open to learning.
So Danielle, we're coming up on the last question. How can viewers connect with you? How can they get a hold of copies of your work?
Awesome. So I am on Instagram and TikTok under the same handle, DJ Harrington Writer. And I am always open to people just DMing me directly if they want a signed copy. I don't have any kind of like shop set up currently, but I send signed books out all the time to people. Other than that, my books are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I have all formats, ebook, paperback, and hardback. For the Hollis Timewire series, the first 3 books in the series are currently audiobooks. The 4th book will be an audiobook at some point. We've run into some hiccups with production of that, so I'm just having to wait a little extra longer for the Empowered Ones audiobook. And for Keyholder, yeah, I have retail. I have black and white illustrations because it costs money to print color. But I have like personal color copies that I will probably have on hand for people who reach out to me directly if they want a color illustrated version of Keyholder.
Well, Danielle, that brings us to the end of the interview. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Very welcome. A big thank you to Danielle for being the second interviewee for this season's marathon. If you're interested in connecting with her on social media or through her website or picking up copies of her work, you can find those links in the video description. If you'd like to see the unedited, uncut version of our conversation, consider becoming a channel supporter on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. Hey, thanks for watching. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and click the bell for notifications on new videos. I'll be back next week with the 3rd interview of Author Awareness April, featuring sci-fi fantasy writer Days Evander. I've been Garrett, and I'll see you then.